Okay guys, for our fourth video, we have the blackbird. And the blackbird, the information that we're given here is a table. The table below contains partial data points of blackbird's trajectory. So let's think about what we do know. What we've been given so far by looking at this table is we do have a vertex. If you look right here, we know that this is our vertex at the point 1632. The reason we know that as our vertex is because we can see that it's progressing up higher, higher, higher. It hits 32 and then it begins to go back down again, and you can see the reflected point right here with the 15 and the 17 for the x values, and it reflects, and the height at both of those points is 31.5. And so we can see here we have a vertex. We also are given 1, 0, because if you look right down here, you can see that at the point 8, at the x value of 8, that it will cross the x-axis. So we have the point 8, 0. Although it's not continued out here any further, because we know that a parabola will reflect over the axis of symmetry. If we have the point 8, 0 as one of the zeros, which 8 is 8 below 16, then we could go 8 above 16, and we know that the point 24, 0 would also be part of our graph. And so that would be, if this table continued on, that would be one of the other values. So we do have 1, 0 for sure listed in the table, and it's the point 8, 0, and we just found our second one at 24, 0. So we can actually come over here to our table, and we can list our points. We definitely have a vertex at 1632. And we said we also have the point 8, 0, and we have the point 24, 0, and we're going to want a few points in between there. So in order to get those points, if we did not have this listed as a table for us already, we could actually find those other points in between there using the vertex form like we did in a previous video. But we actually can just pull out any of those points we want and list them along with these. So I'm just going to go with 10 and 14, because 10 and 14 would just be easier to graph than some of these decimals. And we could also see something happens right here at 12 and 24. There's a few other points. If we're going to choose 10 and 14, the reflected point from the other side would be at 22, because 10 is 2 above 8. So we're going to go 2 below this 24 to see what would happen down here at 22. So at 22, we would also have a height of 14. So we can go ahead and list that over here as well. Okay, and again, you could have picked any of these points you desired to. We just chose those. And now let's go ahead, and before we actually go any further, let's stop and take a look at the graph of what we would have so far, and then we're going to write this equation. So here's the graph. I've taken some of these points that we talked about, our two zeros at 8, 0 and 24, 0. There's our vertex. Our axis of symmetry is right here at 16. Which you can see on the axis of symmetry, you'll find your maximum height. So let's go ahead and answer these two questions here. Our axis of symmetry is x equals 16. And our maximum height is up here at 32. So it looks like Blackbird flew to a height of 32 yards. That's as high as he went. And then we can also see our distance traveled right here, because he began at 8 yards and he landed at 24 yards, so the difference there in the distance that he covered in that time would have been 16 yards. So let's go ahead and write that in there. So be sure you go ahead and do make your graph with some points, and again, you can choose any points you want. You can see here I've got 10, 14, and 22, 14 listed. You could have chosen 12 and 24, or 20, 24, any of those points, just to get a little more of the shape of the graph, to be a little more accurate with it. Okay, and now come back over here, we're going to go ahead and write an equation, and it's going to be in vertex form, like you see listed right here. And so what we do know for sure is that we have some of the zeros. We have many points we could pick from, but I'm going to go with the one with the 0 in it, make this a little bit more simple to solve. So we're going to focus in on the point 8, 0, and then our vertex, which is at 1632, and those are the ones we're going to use in here. We're going to use our 8 and our 0 as our x and our y. And we're going to use our 16 and 32 for our h and k at the vertex. So when you plug those in, we have 0. We do not know the a value. That's what we need in order to be able to write this equation. For our x value, we have 8. Our h is 16. And the k is 32. So we write our equation and we begin to solve it. We're going to do those parentheses first, following our order of operations. So we have a times negative 8 squared plus 32 equals to 0. Negative 8 squared means negative 8 times negative 8, which is positive 64. So what we have here in our first term is 64a. Then we have plus 32, and all of that again equal to 0. Continue to solve. And whenever you do 0 minus 32, you end up with negative 32. And to finish that out, we're going to divide by 64 on both sides. The value of the a is negative 1/2. So what we can do now is we can come back over here and write our equation in vertex form with that a value, which is negative 1/2. And we have x, and we're going to go ahead and put our h and our k back in there. We have minus 16, and our k, which is plus 32. Okay, so now we have an equation in vertex form, and you could put that in your graphing calculator and check it out, see a few more of those points on there. So now we have everything that we need, all these different representations. We have a table, we have an equation, we have the graph, and then we have our verbal description up here that this is our blackbird's trajectory. Okay, well, make sure you guys get all that recorded again, and that should be the fourth of the 4 birds. So now that you have that information, you may go back to the front of your packet, and there were a few questions on the front that you were supposed to answer concerning which bird traveled the furthest, and which bird traveled the highest and the longest, and also find out which bird hit the king pig and which bird hit mustache pig. So thanks guys for working hard on this, and we will talk more in class tomorrow.